There is something incredibly powerful about a person who doesn't feel the need to speak all the time. Have you ever noticed that? Walk into a room where everyone is trying to be heard, and you'll usually find one person who says very little. They aren't interrupting anyone. They aren't trying to prove how intelligent they are. They aren't telling everyone about their plans, their achievements, or their opinions. Yet somehow, when they finally speak, everyone listens. That isn't an accident. Silence has a strength that constant talking can never replace. Many people believe communication is about saying more. But some of the wisest people in history understood the opposite. Communication is often about knowing what not to say. Think about a calm lake early in the morning. When the water is still, it reflects everything clearly. Throw stones into it every few seconds, and the reflection disappears. Your mind works the same way. Constant talking creates constant noise. Silence creates clarity. One of the biggest mistakes people make is revealing everything they announce, every goal, before they've taken the first step. They tell everyone their business. They explain every decision. They defend themselves against every opinion. Then they wonder why they feel mentally exhausted. Not every thought deserves to become a conversation. Not every plan needs an audience. Sometimes your greatest progress happens in complete silence. There was once a young blacksmith who wanted everyone to know how talented he was. Every day he spoke about the swords he planned to make, the customers he hoped to impress, and the success he was certain would come. An old craftsman watched quietly. After several weeks, the old man finally said, "You've built many conversations. Now build something people can actually hold." That sentence stayed with the young man forever. From that day forward, he spoke less and worked more. Years later, people no longer remembered his promises. They remembered his craftsmanship. Results speak louder than announcements. One of the greatest advantages of speaking less is that you begin listening more. And listening is where wisdom grows. Most people don't actually listen. They wait for their turn to speak. While someone else is talking, they're already preparing their response. Imagine trying to fill a cup that's already overflowing. Nothing new can enter. A mind that is constantly speaking rarely has room to learn. There was an elderly judge known throughout his town for making remarkably fair decisions. A young lawyer once asked him, "How did you become so wise?" "Why?" The judge smiled. "I spent more years listening than talking." Then he added, "When people speak long enough, they eventually tell you everything you need to know." Think about that. The person who speaks the least often learns the most, because observation reveals what conversation often hides. Another reason to stop talking too much is this: words create expectations. Every promise you make creates responsibility. Every opinion you express creates unnecessary arguments. Every unnecessary explanation gives someone another opportunity to misunderstand you. Sometimes the strongest response is none at all. You don't have to defend yourself against every criticism. You don't have to explain every choice. You don't have to participate in every debate. Peace often begins where unnecessary conversations end. There was once a successful businessman who rarely argued with people. One afternoon, someone insulted him publicly. Everyone expected him to respond. He simply smiled and continued walking. A friend later asked, "Why didn't you defend yourself?" The businessman answered, "I've learned that not every invitation deserves acceptance." Arguments are invitations. You have the right to decline. Another lesson life teaches is that people often reveal their weaknesses through excessive talking. Some talk constantly because they're afraid of silence. Some because they need attention. Some because they want approval. Some because they believe speaking more makes them appear more important. But true confidence rarely shouts. It doesn't need to. Confidence is comfortable with silence. Imagine standing beside a mountain. The mountain doesn't announce its strength. It simply stands. Storms come. Seasons change. The mountain remains. Become like that. Strong enough to remain quiet. Steady enough to remain focused. Wise enough to know that your value isn't measured by the number of words you speak. One thing I learned that changed my life was to stop explaining my goals to everyone. There was a time when every new idea became a conversation. Every dream became a public announcement. Every plan became something I discussed endlessly. Do you know what happened? Some people laughed, some doubted, some offered opinions I never asked for. Others quietly filled my mind with fear. Eventually, I realized something. The energy spent talking about success could have been spent creating it. There was once an old farmer who planted seeds every spring. His neighbor asked why he never told anyone exactly where he planted the best crops. The farmer smiled and replied, "Seeds grow better underground than they do in conversations." Your dreams are like seeds. Protect them while they're growing. Not everyone deserves access to what you're building. Let your harvest introduce itself. Another habit that changed my thinking was becoming comfortable with pauses. People often rush to fill every moment of silence. But silence isn't awkward. Insecurity makes it awkward. Confident people pause before answering. They think before reacting. They choose words carefully. A single thoughtful sentence often carries more power than 100 careless ones. There was an old music teacher who told his students, "The beauty of music isn't only in the notes, it's also in the spaces between them." Life works the same way. Your words become more valuable when they're surrounded by thoughtful silence. Another truth is that talking about problems repeatedly doesn't solve them. Action does. Many people spend hours discussing why life is difficult. Very few spend those same hours improving it. Be careful. You can accidentally become an expert at explaining your struggles instead of overcoming them. Speak less about obstacles. Work more on solutions, because every hour spent complaining is an hour not spent changing. And every step taken in silence moves you closer to becoming someone whose results no longer require explanations. And that is where everything begins to change. Because the moment you stop trying to impress people with your words, you begin impressing them with your actions. There is something unforgettable about a person who quietly works while everyone else is making announcements. They don't need constant attention. They don't need to convince people they're going to succeed. They simply continue showing up every day until success becomes impossible to ignore. There was once a sculptor who worked for months behind closed doors, while others spent their days talking about the masterpieces they hoped to create. He remained silent. When the day finally came to reveal his work, people stood speechless. A young artist asked him, "How did you stay motivated without telling everyone what you were building?" The sculptor smiled and replied, "Talking gave me temporary satisfaction. Working gave me permanent results." That sentence contains more wisdom than many people realize. Sometimes we speak because talking feels productive. We describe our dreams, we explain our plans, we imagine success. Our minds receive the excitement before we've earned the achievement. Be careful. Don't let conversation replace commitment. Another reason to speak less is because silence protects your peace. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every opinion requires your attention. Imagine carrying a backpack through life. Every unnecessary argument places another stone inside. Every pointless debate adds more weight. Every attempt to prove yourself adds another burden. Eventually, you're exhausted. Not because life became impossible, because you've been carrying conversations that never deserved your energy. Learn to ask yourself one simple question before speaking. Will these words improve this situation? If the answer is no, silence is often the better choice. There was an elderly captain who had spent decades sailing through dangerous waters. Someone once asked him, "What is the greatest lesson the sea has taught you?" He answered, "The loudest waves are rarely the deepest." Think about that. The ocean's deepest waters often appear calm. The shallow water creates the most noise. The same is often true in life. People who constantly need to prove themselves usually haven't proven much. People who truly possess wisdom rarely need to announce it. Depth creates calmness. Confidence creates quietness. One habit that transformed my relationships was learning to ask more questions than I answered. Instead of telling people what I thought, I became curious about what they thought. Instead of waiting for my turn to speak, I genuinely listened. Something remarkable happened. People opened up. Conversations became meaningful. I learned things I would have never discovered if I had been talking the entire time. Listening is one of the greatest forms of respect you can offer another human being. And respect has a way of returning to those who give it sincerely. Another lesson worth remembering is that words cannot be taken back. Imagine squeezing toothpaste out of a tube. Once it's out, you cannot place it back exactly as it was. Your words work the same way. One careless sentence spoken in anger can damage years of trust. One unnecessary secret shared can destroy a friendship. One emotional reaction can create regrets that last for years. This is why emotionally mature people slow down before speaking. They understand that temporary emotion should never produce permanent consequences. There was an old carpenter who always measured every piece of wood twice before making a single cut. A young apprentice laughed and asked, "Why are you so careful?" The carpenter replied, "Wood can be replaced. Mistakes made too quickly usually cost much more." Your words deserve the same careful attention. Think twice, speak once. You'll avoid countless regrets. Another reason to stop talking too much is because mystery creates respect. You don't need everyone to know your next move. You don't need to announce every opportunity. You don't need to post every achievement. Some victories become stronger when they grow quietly. Think about a seed planted beneath the soil. Nobody applauds while it's growing. Nobody notices the roots becoming stronger. But one day it breaks through the surface. Its growth becomes visible because it spent enough time growing where nobody could see it. Protect your roots. Not every chapter of your life belongs on display. Some chapters are meant to build you before they're meant to inspire others. I've also learned that wise people become comfortable with not having the final word. Winning every argument isn't winning at life. Sometimes preserving your peace is the greater victory. There will always be people determined to misunderstand you. Let them. There will always be people committed to criticizing you. Let them. Your responsibility isn't controlling their opinions, it's controlling your character. Your actions will always speak longer than your explanations. Imagine an eagle flying high above the mountains. Have you ever noticed something? Eagles don't stop their flight every time smaller birds make noise. They simply continue flying higher. Not because they ignore reality, because they understand their destination matters more than every distraction below. Become like that. Rise above unnecessary conversations. Rise above gossip. Rise above drama. Rise above the endless need to explain yourself. Your future deserves your attention more than your critics deserve your replies. Another habit that changed my thinking was ending each day by asking myself, did my words add value today? Not. Did I talk enough? Did I encourage someone? Did I speak truth? Did I solve a problem? Did I remain silent when silence was wiser? Quality will always outweigh quantity. One meaningful conversation can change someone's life. 1,000 meaningless conversations usually change nothing. Finally, remember this. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Silence often means discipline. It means you've learned that not every thought deserves to become a sentence. It means your confidence comes from your character instead of constant attention. It means you're focused enough to let your work speak for you. So beginning today, speak with purpose. Listen with humility. Think before reacting. Protect your dreams until they're strong enough to stand on their own. Don't announce every plan. Build it. Don't explain every decision. Live it. Don't argue with everyone who doubts you. Outgrow them. Because in the end, people rarely remember those who talk the most. They remember those whose actions spoke so loudly that words became unnecessary. So let your discipline become your introduction. Let your consistency become your reputation. Let your integrity become your voice. And let your results tell the story that endless talking never could. Because the strongest people in the room are not always the loudest. They are often the quiet ones, working, learning, growing, and becoming so extraordinary that one day the world has no choice but to notice them.